Cricket, the gentleman's game. While around for more than a century, it hasn't picked up much traction in the United States. Here at the Yankee Cricketer, I'm trying to change that. By breaking down the game, explaining it piece by piece, this South African American hopes to ignite a desire among my compatriots to begin to follow the second most popular sport on the planet. So that one day, even though you may not fully understand why two players would want to play a game for 5 days, you may at least begin to appreciate it. So we will break down the game, begin to understand the rules and strategy, and analyze current headlines as well as decade-old controversies. All of that and more coming up. Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Yankee Cricketer podcast. I am your host, the Yankee Cricketer. You may be here for a number of reasons. You may be here because you've heard people talk about cricket and you're interested to learn more. You may be here because you've seen cricket on TV and you have no idea what's going on. Or you may be here because you love cricket and you just want to hear someone else talk about it too. Whatever your reasons, welcome one and all. We're very excited to have you here. I'm very excited to have you here, and let's just get going. If you don't fall into one of those previous categories I listed, maybe you're here because you just stumbled across this on whatever platform you were scrolling through, and you may be wondering, why is there a need for this sort of content? An American talking about cricket, is there even a market for this? And so I just thought I'd take a minute to explain the rationale behind my decision to start this podcast. I think there is a growing market in the United States for cricket and for cricket content as a whole. If we look at just the direction that America has been going in the past decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, we see not only a lot of immigrants coming in and bringing their love for the game of cricket to American shores, but we also see the expansion of the game of cricket through the growth of 20-over leagues all over the world, making its way into America. We're very close to seeing a 20-over cricket league that will pay out millions of dollars to players coming to America, probably to Florida, in the near future. And when that happens, I expect the game of cricket will quickly start to grow on the American populace, but it may have some hurdles because cricket is not the easiest game to understand at first glance. It's not like the game of soccer where you can just look at it and you kind of understand, all right, we're kicking into a goal, that's it, or hockey, or even basketball to some degree. There are a lot of sports where it's like, okay, I kind of see what's going on, even rugby. You're like, okay, I kind of get what's going on. But cricket has so many intricate rules, has so many unwritten rules, strategy, that makes it an incredible game to watch when you understand what's going on. But it can be very confusing for the common fan. And so I feel like it's my duty to put some content out there so that people can understand what's going on, that they have a place to go that will explain it in a way that hopefully they can understand, that it will come from an American perspective, making analogies to sports that we all know and love here in the United States. But I think there is a need for this kind of content. And as was mentioned in the introduction, cricket is the second largest sport on our planet right now in terms of players and in terms of fans. Now, a lot of that benefits from the large country populations of, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, but also there are plenty of British colonies, former British colonies that play cricket, all of them actually, except for the United States, although we do have a cricket team, but it's not that great. But cricket is everywhere. It's a global game, much more so than any American sport, and so I think it's only a matter of time before it breaches our shores, and I think we should be ready to embrace it, because I haven't met an American that encounters cricket, has it explained to them, and then walks away saying, that doesn't seem very interesting. I've also noticed popular content creators like John Boy starting to review more and more cricket content just on his channel. And there are others out there as well starting to broach into the cricketer sphere, I guess, if you want to call it that. ESPN has paid lots of money to start bringing more cricket content to ESPN Plus, things like that. And I think they want the rights for the cricket league that is supposed to come to American shores in the near future. And so, with all of that said, there's definitely a space right now for cricketing content in the American market. And I think Americans, once they actually understand the game and understand that cricket is not just that game that lasts 5 days and then nobody is declared a winner and it's a draw and everyone goes home, even though that does happen, it's so much more than that. And there's so much more going on than meets the eye. So you may be wondering, why me? Why do I feel the need to be the person to guide the American public through the ins and outs and ups and downs of the game of cricket? What puts me in that position? What uniquely positions me in a place to where I am able to do this? And honestly, I think it's just my unique background growing up. I actually grew up in South Africa for the first 18 years of my life. I grew up to American parents, but I was in South African schools from first grade through matric through 12th grade, and I played cricket from first grade all the way through 12th grade. And I really enjoyed it. I watched it on TV all the time, and it was just a very enjoyable experience. I loved it. My friends played it, and we had a great time. And then I would come to the States, and no one really knew what was going on. And so I had that unique balance of when I went home, I could speak in an American accent. I could talk to my parents and eat chili and tacos and whatever, and talk to my family in an American accent, no problem. Have that American culture and influence, but then also go to school and have a South African influence as well, and just be kind of guided by that, by my teachers and by my friends, learning a lot about South African culture, and becoming more of a chameleon, having a different accent, just so that I could fit in, and playing all the sports and trying to understand all that so that I could fit in. And so, yeah, I think I'm uniquely positioned here because I've got the understanding of both a culture that grew up with cricket as a major sport, as well as a culture in American culture that grew up without cricket in its lexicon. Because I grew up, my dad would always talk about, football, baseball, basketball. We would follow those sports as best we could from across the ocean. It became easier as the internet became more prevalent. But we just would get the DVDs sent to us, taped off the TV from my grandparents, and we would watch football games or baseball games or whatever, and that was kind of what I had to go off early on growing up. And so I was pretty much all in on cricket and hockey and football or soccer. And then I came to the States. In the last 8 to 10 years I've been here, and I've fully experienced what that's like, growing up with the cycle of football and then basketball and then baseball and just back again, every year. And so I think I have the vocabulary and the experience needed to address the American public in a way that they'll understand, but also from a place of fully understanding the game of cricket and how it's played, and understanding all the rules and all the words and jargon that get thrown around that make it so confusing. And hopefully I'm right about that, and hopefully I am the right person for this, and hopefully I can get everyone on board, and we can go on this journey together and come out the other side having a greater appreciation and understanding for the game of cricket. So what's my plan going forward for this podcast? What is my vision for each episode? Well, the way I see it playing out, and this could always change, but the way I see it happening is starting out every episode taking some time to break down an aspect of the game, maybe taking a lot of time to break down a very specific aspect of the game, or maybe taking some time to zoom out, look at a high level overview of a larger portion of the game, and then spending a little bit of time at the end of every episode just breaking down some current events, some headlines, some scores, just so that everyone can get accustomed to what's going on in the world of cricket. Because it's one thing to understand how the game works and to understand the rules, but it's a whole other thing to understand the rhythms and cycles of the game. What's going on now? Who's playing? Why are they playing? And who's good? Who's not good? What are some names I should be looking for? Because that familiarity will breed more comfort with the game. And I found that once people have comfort with the game, they go seeking it out, and they're not as afraid to engage with cricket content or to browse, ESPN Cricket Info. And once they can understand how to read a scorecard and how to, just quickly analyze what happened in a game after the fact, then it's a lot more fun to go looking through those box scores and looking through those stats and everything online. So that's kind of my vision. And then also, if we're not breaking down some aspect of the game, maybe taking some time to analyze some historical games or look at some turning moments in the history of cricket, rule changes that have happened and why they've happened. And then also just looking at some historical greats of the game, getting some background and some history so that when you watch a game, if hopefully everyone who listens to this will eventually watch a game of cricket, then when you hear people, the announcers or players referencing things that happened in the past, you won't be totally lost. You'll be like, oh, I've heard of Donald Bradman, or I've heard of Sachin Tendulkar, or I've heard of Rahul Dravid or Brian Lara, and I kind of know what that's about. And so, again, it's just about bringing a familiarity that will breed a comfort and bring a comfort to people so that they're willing to engage with more cricket content in the future on their own. So without further ado, let's just jump into the first episode. And so what I plan to talk about today is a quick high-level overview of the game of cricket so that we can look at some of the different aspects, what to expect going forward in the next episodes to come, just kind of get a summary of the game and some of the terms, and then talk a little bit about match formats or match types of games that happen, because unlike football or baseball or basketball, there are actually different lengths of game and different types, three main types of game that get played in cricket. And understanding those differences, I think, goes a long way to understanding cricket as a whole. And so we'll go over that really quick, and then we'll finish off with just some quick highlights and overviews of what's going on in the game of cricket right now, looking at the Women's World Cup final that took place about a week ago, and then looking at some scores from the Indian Premier League, which is in full swing right now as well. But starting off, cricket is a bat and ball sport, if you didn't know that. Don't worry if you didn't know that. Plenty of people don't know that, because most people I talk to refer to a cricket bat as a paddle because it is flat. So I guess they would refer to cricket as a paddle and ball sport. But no, it is not ping pong. It is, in fact, a bat and ball sport. So this is a cricket ball, and this is a cricket bat. And similar to other bat and ball sports, baseball being the other major one out there, the rhythm of the game, how it's played at the high level is a bowler will run in and bowl the ball to a batsman who will hit it and try and score runs. And one team will try and amass a number of runs, and then the second team will come in and bat and try and surpass the first team's amount of runs. And at the end, whoever has the most runs wins. And so there are a few differences to baseball, obviously. There are no pitchers and hitters. It's bowlers and batsmen. And you bowl overarm, not underarm like you're thinking with 10-pin bowling. But if you watch someone run in and bowl a cricket ball, they're going to swing their arm over their head and let go of the ball, kind of in an opposite softball type motion, I guess. If you think about a softball pitcher kind of underhanding it, but if you were to do that oppositely and go over kind of with your arm past your ear, that's what a bowler is going to do. And the rules around that, the bowler needs to keep their arm at a certain degree. They can't bend their elbow. Their elbow needs to stay straight, and it needs to just move in a fluid motion and stay straight. So you can't bend your elbow and throw it. The speed comes from just the run up and then the action of the arm action past your ear. And fast bowlers can get speeds up over 90 miles an hour, mid 90, maybe low 90s. Maybe not consistently or for long periods of time, but you will see them be able to bowl in the 90s. But a lot of times it'll be mid to high 80s. So not as fast as baseball, but there are some differences, right? So if you've ever seen the game of cricket, it takes place on a circular or oval type field. Similar to baseball, the dimensions vary from ground to ground. So the field's not referred to as a field all the time. It's often a cricket ground would be the term that would encompass everything, the seats, the field, the pitch in the middle, everything, a cricket ground. But each ground is unique in the dimensions of the field, right? Because similar to baseball, there are some minimums maybe, but you can kind of do what you want beyond that. And cricket also is interesting because it's played on a circular or oval field. The ball can go in any direction. And so that's what makes it interesting. You don't have to hit the ball straight ahead of you. You can hit it directly behind you. You can hit it 90 degree perpendicular to you. You're not limited in where you can hit the ball. And so that also makes it interesting, but it also makes the dimensions of the field important because that can sometimes change the game. If you have a batsman who is good at hitting the ball straight and the boundary of the field straight is shorter on one field versus on another field, that totally changes the strategy of the bowler. Or maybe if they like hitting it straight perpendicular from themselves and that's where they score a lot of their runs, and that boundary is very far away, that can change the way that both the batsman is playing and the bowler is bowling, and it'll change how the captain is moving his field around and where he's placing his fielders. And so just in the size of the ground, that can change a lot of strategy. Similar to in baseball, if you have a field with a short wall in left or right field, maybe you're not going to pitch inside because if the hitter is strong pulling it and the wall is in, closer than other fields, you can't get away with that. And so similarly in cricket, that can sometimes play a factor. Maybe not as large of a factor as it does in baseball, but it does. It is something to be thinking about, that the field's not always going to be a uniform size or even shape, really. It's always going to be rounded. It's always going to be some sort of oval or circle, but sometimes they're a little wonky. And so that's the field at large. In the middle of the field, if you've ever seen it, there's a dirt kind of rectangle that's about 60 or 70 feet long. And the dimensions about 66 feet from one end to the other. And that's where all the action takes place, right? You have on that dirt strip, which is called the pitch, or it's called the wicket, which is very confusing. I will talk about that probably later too, and I'll mention it every time I use the word wicket, probably in the first few episodes, because the word wicket can be used in many different contexts. But right now we have two main contexts that it's used in terms of the field or the pitch, that dirt rectangle in the middle of the field, sometimes referred to as the wicket, but often referred to as the pitch. You'll have that rectangle, and then you'll have three sticks at each end sticking up right next to each other. Those are called wickets as well. One of those would be one wicket, and all three of them together is a set of wickets. and there are two sets of wickets, one at each end, about 65, 66 feet apart, and that's where the batsmen stand, kind of in front of those wickets. That's what they're defending. If a bowler bowls the ball and it hits those wickets, the batsman's out. And that's just one of many ways a batsman can get out. They can hit it in the air and be caught. They can be run out, or which is similar to being tagged out, right? If you're not safe, if you're not on a base, you can get tagged out. Similarly, in cricket, if you're not behind your little safe line with either your bat or part of your body, someone can take the ball and hit the wickets and you'll be out. But again, we'll talk a lot more about bowling and fielding and wickets, how to get people out in the future as well. We're just trying to go as quickly through how the game works as we can. So you've got those two sets of wickets, one on each end. The bowler will run in from one end. He'll bowl it down to the batsman. Batsman can hit it wherever he wants. If he hits it, he doesn't have to run. And since there are two sets of wickets, you may have seen cricket players, they bat in pairs. The batting team will send out two batters initially, and then when one gets out, another one will come in and join, the other batter and batsman. And they'll rotate like that, and they'll go through all 11 players. But once the 10th man gets out, or once the 10th out happens, the 10th wicket is claimed, then the batting team is done. And so if that happens before the allotted amount of pitches were pitched or balls were bowled, then they're out and they don't get to finish their time. And so because even though there are 11 players, each batting pair needs to be a pair, right? You can't bat on your own. You need one batter at each, or one batsman at each end of the pitch. And so the way runs are scored, they'll hit the ball and the batsman will look at it and they'll say, do we think we can cross, we can run and get to the other side safely before the fielder picks it up and throws it and hits the wickets and gets me out? If so, they'll probably call each other through, be like, hey, yeah, we can do one. And they'll run, they'll make one run. And if they cross and make it safely, that's one run. They can decide to go back for two if they hit it far enough and they think they can make two. Sometimes we'll even see them run three. Other than that, ways of scoring, if you hit the ball and it rolls or bounces before going over the boundary rope at the edge of the field, you'll get 4 runs. You don't have to run them. You just get them added to your score. And if you hit it out of the boundary without a bounce, similar to a home run, I guess, you just hit it over the boundary without a bounce, you get 6 runs. And so, yeah, that's kind of the high-level overview of the game. That will happen. Bowlers will bowl about 6 balls at a time. One bowler will run in from one end. He'll bowl his 6 balls, his 6 pitches. And then when he's done, another bowler will come on from the other end and he'll bowl 6 balls. And then perhaps the first bowler will bowl his second over, which is the name that they use for an allotment of 6 legal deliveries bowled by one bowler from one end. That is referred to as one over, which is confusing because you're like, is the game over? No. It's just one over. But it's kind of how they figure out the length of games is by number of overs. And so each bowler will be given a limited number of overs or a maximum number of overs that they can hit. And so the captain's job is to try and rotate his bowlers. It's not like baseball where once the pitcher's out, he can't come back in. They can be rotating. Anyone can bowl who's on the field, but they'll constantly be rotating. One bowler will bowl maybe 3 overs from one end, and obviously not in a row. He'll bowl one, somebody else will bowl one, then he'll bowl his second one, and then go back to the other, and then he may come back and bowl his third one. And on the other end, you have another bowler bowling, and maybe they'll bowl in tandem. And so there's batting partnerships, obviously, with the 2 batsmen out in the middle, but there's also bowling partnerships with the bowlers kind of trying to bowl in tandem, build pressure, and feed off each other, even though they're not bowling at the same time. And so you'll see that happening. You'll see bowlers coming in from different ends of the pitch, trying to get the batsman out. And so looking at one of the more confusing aspects of cricket the overs and the game length, right? Because there's many different match types or match formats. And so trying to figure out, who wins a game is not easy if you don't fully understand match format. Because in cricket, there are three major formats of matches. There's T20 cricket, there's one-day international cricket or one-day cricket, and then there is test cricket. And so the highest level of cricket is played at the inter-country level, right? Countries will play against each other. India, Pakistan, England, Australia, South Africa, Bangladesh, West Indies, they'll all play. And they'll play against each other, and often one country will go to another country and they'll play a bunch of matches against that country, right? They'll tour the country. And when they do that, they'll play all three formats of matches usually. They'll play like 3 test matches, 5 one-day matches, and 3 20-over matches. And what differentiates those games is basically the length of time or the number of overs in each game. So we'll start with the shorter versions first because I think those are slightly easier to understand. You have 20-over games, which is exactly what it sounds like, a T20. Each batting side gets 20 overs to bat. Unless they lose 10 wickets before that, right? They get 10 outs before the 20 overs have been bowled. And so 20 overs, if you do that math, if an over is 6 legal balls, you'll get roughly 120 balls to face. And then you'll put up a number of runs. And then the other team will come out and they will try and surpass your score in their 20 overs without losing 10 wickets, because if they get 10 wickets, then they're all out and they can't continue batting. So you could potentially be all out within the first 10 balls of a game, right? I mean, you could come out, get 10 wickets within the first 10 balls, and then suddenly, your batting is over, even though you only faced 10 out of your 120 balls. Now that never happens, but it's possible. And so just looking at the length of time or the number of overs isn't always what limits how long you can bat, right? Because you always have to be watching your wickets too, making sure that you're not losing too many wickets, right? Your batsmen aren't getting out too often, because then sometimes you only need 15 or 20 runs with plenty of balls left to face, but you don't have good batsmen in anymore because they've all got out, and you only have 1 or 2 wickets left to try and get those runs with, right? And so it's kind of a push and pull. If you think about it from like a baseball standpoint, looking at cricket just as a game, imagine a baseball game where one team gets 27 outs to play with. They bat their full 27 outs. The opposing team can bring on, whatever pitchers they want. They can cycle them out kind of whenever. They can take them off, bring them back on, whatever. But you have 27 outs. Once you are done with those 27 outs, you're done, right? That's the end. Or maybe a better analogy would be you have 150 pitches or 27 outs, whichever comes first. And so you just sit there and you either pitch your 150 pitches through your however many pitchers you want to use, or if you can get 27 outs before 150 pitches or 120 or whatever you wanted to limit it to, then obviously they'd be done batting. And that's kind of how cricket is. Or that's exactly how cricket is. You have either your 10 wickets, 10 outs, or 120 balls in 20-over cricket. And whichever team has a higher score at the end will win. And so scores vary. A good score will probably range from anywhere from like 150 to 160 to 200 runs per team. But it's dependent on a lot of things like the pitch. What is it like? Is the pitch, that rectangle strip in the middle of the field? Is it one that's easy to bat on? Is it one that's difficult to bat on? The pitch defines a lot of what goes on in a cricket game. Are the conditions difficult for bowling or for batting? Maybe there's a lot of dew because it's night and the ball's getting slippery. It's hard to grip, and the bowlers don't have a lot of control. And the fielders can't really catch the ball cleanly. And so there's a lot of little things that change what a good score is. I can't just tell you, oh yeah, this is always a good score, because sometimes 120 runs is more than enough to win the game. So a good score is one that's more than the other teams, I guess. But I guess that's true of any sport. Um, but anyway, so that's 20 over cricket. 50 over cricket, similarly, you play 50 overs. So that's 50, 50 lots of 6 legal deliveries. And I keep saying legal deliveries because there are some illegal deliveries. Unlike baseball, or I guess similarly to baseball, you have balls and strikes, and if you pitch too many balls, then the other team gets a benefit, right? They get a walk. And so similarly in cricket, you can't just bowl the ball so far away from the batsman he can't hit it. If you do that, they get a free run added to their score, and you have to re-bowl that ball. And so that's why I make the distinction between legal deliveries. So it's not exactly 300 deliveries in a 50 over game, or balls bowled, but it's close to that. There are a couple other types of balls or deliveries that are illegal, and we'll go over those in a future episode for sure. But anyway, so roughly 300, 320 maybe, and balls bowled for one team to bat, and then the other team will come on and try and surpass their score. And so, just for reference, a 20 over game will probably be about 2.5 to 3 hours in total length. A 50 over game will be somewhere between 7 to 7.5 hours. So that'll be kind of a full day, or maybe they'll start like around 3:30, and then kind of go into like 10 or 11, like a day-night game. But those are both kind of in the one-day variety of cricket. Those games start and end on the same day, and then they're done. And so they're more exciting, obviously, or I guess it's relative. They're more exciting in terms of action, bigger hitting. It's faster paced. And so that's why T20 cricket, like I mentioned earlier, is starting to hopefully make an entry into the American market. There's a lot of money in T20 cricket, a lot of money in leagues that are popping up in countries all over the world for players. And so even though I mentioned that cricket is played at the highest level, at the country level, there's a lot of allure to make money playing in 20 over leagues. It's not as difficult, it's not as taxing. You're just playing 20 over games and getting a lot of money for it. And you're getting more money sometimes than you would make playing for your country. And so there's been a big push and pull in the past 10, 15 years between, do players decide to play for their country, or do they play in these leagues? A lot of times you can do both. You can play in some leagues in your spare time and then come back and play for your country later, like when they have a series going on. But anyway, that's T20 cricket. That's 50 over cricket, or one-day international cricket, or one-day cricket if it's not an international game. And then the last format of the game is Test cricket, which is the one that people often think of when they think of cricket, right? The game that never ends. It's 5 whole days, and you can bat for an entire day and not be out, and it never ends, and oh my goodness, why would anyone want to do this? Test cricket is actually the first form of cricket that was invented. Before they put the 5-day limit on it, there were timeless tests, actually, back in the 1800s, maybe early 1900s as well. And the timeless tests just went on until someone won. And so sometimes it was 8-9 days before someone won. But then eventually they shortened it to 5 days, and then eventually they came up with 50 over limitations, and then they came up with 20 over limitations. And even now in England, they've tried things called the 100, which is just 100 balls, not even 120. And so they're always trying to shorten it. I've seen 6 over leagues, right? Just 6 overs. I mean, Hong Kong sixes, I think is what it's called. So there's a lot of different formats of the game out there, but the main one's 20 overs, 50 overs, and then test match. And a test match, essentially, yes, it does go on for 5 days. The differentiating factor between a test match and one-day games is there's no over limitation for each team to bat. So you can bat as long as you have wickets in hand or which means as long as you have not lost 10 wickets or not lost 10 outs, you can keep batting if you so choose. And each team bats twice in order to finish the game, right? So first team, let's just say South Africa comes out, they bat, they score 250 runs. Then India comes out, they'll bat, they score 200 runs. Now South Africa has a lead of 50, but now they have to come out and bat again. And so it's looking good. They got a lead of 50, but boom, they get all out for 100. Now that means, well, they had a lead of 50, they got 100. Now they lead by 150, which means that India in their final innings, which is the name of one team's allotment or time to bat, is an innings, right? South Africa's first innings or South Africa's second innings, you may hear that as well, cricket jargon. But yeah, so in India's second innings, they would need 151 runs to win, essentially. And they would, try and get that. And sometimes the fifth day will end and India is just, 50 runs short. They still have 5 wickets in hand. It looks like they're going to win, but they run out of time. And then it's just a draw because they ran out of time. And so that does happen often where it looks obvious like one team's going to win, but if you run out of time and you survive till the end, you get a draw. Oftentimes it's the other way around. It's not the batting team trying to race to the finish to score the number of runs they need before the end. Usually it's the bowling team trying to bowl out the batting team. And so they'll often bowl the final day and try and get them out. And suddenly there's 9 wickets down, right? The final team who's batting, they've lost 9 wickets. They've got their 2 worst batsmen on the pitch batting, and they're sitting there just blocking the ball for 30 minutes at the end of the day. And it's very intense. And if they somehow manage to stay in until the end of the day, they'll be successful and they'll get a draw out of it, even though if they played for another 10 minutes, they probably would have lost. That's just how it goes. So it can be frustrating to watch and be like, man, I kind of followed this game for 5 days and it ended in a draw. But there's always drama. There's always ups and downs. And in a longer format, there's always a lot of more wiggle room. You make a mistake, but you can, a team can come back from a mistake. Whereas in a 20-over game, if you make a couple big mistakes, it can be harder to come back from. And so it's fun to see the roller coaster up and down of test match cricket. And it is the purest form of the game. If you're going to talk to anyone who loves cricket and has loved cricket for a long time, they'll probably tell you that they love test match cricket. It's just hard because there's not as much money in it, because it's hard to convince people to go watch a game for 5 days or for 1 day out of 5 because it's the whole day. And if you have to work, it's like, how do I go watch the game if I have to work? And so it's just, there's not as much fan money in it. But I do enjoy test cricket. I love watching it, and it's fun because growing up, I would watch a lot of test cricket, the whole game. I would just sit there 5 days in front of the TV, and the way it works is they'll play around 2 hours at a time. They'll play about 30 overs, 30 allotments of 6 balls, and they'll try and get that done in about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So they'll start at 10, finish at around 12, go for a lunch break, come back around 12:45, play another 2 hours, 2.5 hours, then have a tea break, and then, so you can tell this is a British game, and then they'll around 3 or 2:33, and then they'll go back out for the evening session from about 3:30 to 5:30 and play another 30 overs. And so in a day's play, you'll never exceed 90 overs. So that's kind of the limitation per day in a test match, is 90 overs, unless the day before there was some rain or something and you couldn't get the full 90 in. Sometimes they'll allow them to go up to 100 or 110 overs, extend the play a little bit so that they get the full number of overs in for the match. But yeah, and so they'll do that for 5 straight days. And so when I was growing up, we would get up early, we'd watch the game, and then go have lunch when they had lunch, and then go have a little break for 20 minutes when they had tea, and then come back and watch. And I don't do that anymore. It's hard to do that while I'm working or just being in the States. It's hard to get access to cricket, but it is fun to just follow the scores, throughout the 5 days, kind of have it up on a tab. on your browser and just kind of click back to it and be like, oh, what's happening now? Who's batting? How long have they been batting? What's going on? And so that's one of the benefits of understanding the game and being able to read a written commentary of the game, as well as a scorecard or box score, and quickly decipher kind of who's winning this right now, and what's the momentum like right now, and stuff like that. And so what's nice about cricket, because the 50 over games and the test matches are so long, like 50 over games, they're playing 100 overs in one day. It's like 7 hours. You don't even really have to watch the whole thing. Now, one day games, if it's like on a Friday or Saturday, or Sunday, I'd watch most of it. But you don't even have to watch the whole thing because it's so long. You can kind of just follow along, as it's going, kind of check the score every so often, maybe turn it on for 10 minutes every hour, or turn it on for 5 minutes every, hour, and kind of just see what's going on. And then if it looks interesting, watch for a little bit longer. Otherwise, be like, okay, cool. Looks like team A is winning, but we'll see what goes on, and then turn it on again. But you're not like watching it the whole time. But then again, there are people that have time and they're able to watch, like I did when I grew up. They're able to watch, the whole thing, start to finish, every minute of it. I wish I had the time for that, but I don't. But I like it because it's long enough so that even if I don't have the time to watch it from start to finish, I still can feel like I'm in the game and understanding what's going on, and following it, and not missing anything, even though I'm not really paying attention the whole time. But anyway, that's kind of the formats of the game for you, and just a quick high overview of the field. Cricket as a whole, and kind of how one team would win, how one team loses, and just the different formats and what that looks like. So that's just your first introduction to cricket. If it feels like you've been hit with a fire hydrant or a fire hose, that's fine. If you feel like you don't understand anything, that's fine. We're going to take this little by little, piece by piece. That was a lot, and next time we'll definitely look at a more specific aspect of the game and try and break that down in a lot more detail. But right now we're just going to take a couple of minutes and look at some cricketing news from around the world, get a feel for what's going on in the world of cricket today, look at some scores, throw some names out there just so that you can sound smart. If you're talking with someone who knows about cricket, you can, mention something and surprise them out of the blue. But anyway, the last week has been busy in the world of cricket, starting with women's cricket, which I did not know a whole lot about, but I have come to appreciate. I really love women's cricket, just because I love watching cricket wherever I can find it, but especially because the Cricket World Cup was taking place this past month, and South Africa was doing pretty well. They made the semifinals before losing to England, but the Women's World Cup final took place last week, and Australia defeated England in the end by 71 runs. Australia's Alyssa Healy picking up 170 runs off of 138 balls faced in that match, which, if you're thinking, oh, that sounds like not a lot or a lot, it's a lot. 170 runs is a lot of runs for anyone, male or female, in any format of the game. T20, I don't think you would ever see 170 runs in a T20 game. You would not see one batsman get that. But the World Cup is usually 50 overs. If you hear someone talking about the Cricket World Cup and they don't specify T20 World Cup, the main World Cup is the 50-over World Cup. 20-over cricket was an invention about 20 years ago, 20 years ago. And so the T20 World Cup is relatively new. So World Cup, if you hear World Cup, it's 50 overs. And so Australia picked up 356 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in their 50 overs, and England could only manage 285 all out, which means they lost all of their wickets, and they still had about 7 overs to go. So they could have potentially, if they hadn't lost all their wickets, they would have had a chance to run at it to get those last 70 runs in the last 6-7 overs. They probably wouldn't have been able to do it, but it would have been interesting. But anyway, Alyssa Healy, 170 runs, well done to her, leading that charge for Australia. England were the reigning champions, and so for Australia to pull that out was very impressive. Looking at test match cricket, the only international test matches going on right now, South Africa versus Bangladesh. Their first test match finished up last week, just under a week ago. South Africa won by 220 runs, scoring 367 and 204, and Bangladesh managed 298 and then needing 274 in their final innings, managed only 53 with Keshav Maharaj picking up 7 wickets or 7 outs in that final innings to just skittle Bangladesh out for 53 runs in 19 overs in a test match. So that good look from South Africa. Bangladesh, not historically a cricketing powerhouse. They're good, but they're on the lower end of the good teams. If you're looking at like the 8 or 10 best cricketing nations in the world, it will be India, England, Australia, New Zealand, Pakistan, South Africa, and then Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, West Indies. I think that's it. And so those are usually the 8 or 9 that you'll hear. And then Ireland and Afghanistan and Zimbabwe are kind of like slightly below that even. And so they're coming, and then they're starting to be able to play the better teams, but it's still, they're kind of not on that level. So Bangladesh, not surprising that South Africa won, but definitely they played well initially, and just in that final chase, they needed 274 in their second round batting and couldn't pick it up. But looking currently, South Africa are playing Bangladesh again in the second test match that started yesterday. And after the second day of the 5-day test match, South Africa lead by 314 runs after scoring 453 in their first innings. Good look from Keshav Maharaj once again, 84 runs. Good batting performance. Dean Elgar, Temba Bavuma also getting around 70 each. Taijul Islam getting 6 wickets. But Bangladesh find themselves 5 wickets down for 139 runs. So they've lost already half their wickets, half their outs, and they're still 314 runs behind. So not looking good for them. And then just looking at IPL scores. So something you may hear about a lot from people is IPL, and you may be like, what's the IPL? And that is the Indian Premier League, which was a relatively new invention. Again, T20 leagues, like I mentioned, take place all over the world. People get paid big money. The biggest money is in the Indian Premier League. Cricket is a massive sport in India, and so the money is definitely there. And the 20-over game is revolutionized. The amount of money in the game. And so in India, especially, players can make a ton of money. And so this happens once a year. And so they'll bring in players from all around the world. There's an auction, and teams will bid on players. And so players, because it's an auction style, will make a lot of money, and they'll be worth a lot of money. And so, yeah. But just looking at this, looking at the table currently as it stands, we'll see today we saw 2 games, seeing Sunrisers Hyderabad beating Chennai by 8 wickets, and the Royal Challengers Bangalore winning by 7 wickets with 9 balls remaining. And so if you have no idea what that means, don't worry. We're going to go over that in a future podcast, but long story short, if the team that bats first wins, they win by the number of runs that they outscored the team batting second, right? And if the team batting second wins, they win by the number of wickets they still had remaining. And then you may also mention the amount of balls they had remaining left to face. That's why you win by a number of wickets, not by a number of runs, because the chasing team won. But again, we'll talk about that in future episodes as well. But looking at the table right now, Kolkata, Gujarat, and Royal Challengers Bangalore and Lucknow Super Giants all at the top of the table. But only 3-4 games played, so lots of time to to change that around. 10 teams, I think they play 18 games. If I'm not mistaken, I think they play each team twice. So we've just started. And so we're going to, keep up with that as it goes. I mean, they're playing 20 over games every day. They're playing 1 or 2 every day. I think there's 2 more games tomorrow. And then I think on the weekends they play 2 a day. And then during the week they'll play 1 every day. And so, so we'll try and keep on top of that. We'll figure out who wins the South Africa-Bangladesh test match next week as well. And then hopefully we'll start getting some more international tournaments or international series coming up as well between some other major cricketing nations, and we can keep up with that. But that being said, thanks for joining me on this first episode, and we will catch up later. All right, cheers.